For everybody just joining, welcome to the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance, Voices from the Clean Energy Workforce, Lessons from this year's Solar Census. I am super excited to bring this session to you all today. We are going to just go ahead and jump in and get started. If you're just joining, please drop your name and organization in the chat. And we're just going to go ahead and jump in. Next slide, please. So again, welcome everyone. I am Cynthia Finley, Vice President of Workforce at Interstate Renewable Energy Council, also known as IREC. So for those of you who are new today, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are. And then we'll dig into today's presentation. IREC has been around for over 40 years now, working to build the foundation for rapid adoption of clean energy and energy efficiency to benefit people, the economy, and our planet. We do that in three different ways through three different programs. We have regulatory engagement, which works to improve the rules and regulatory policy and technical standards to streamline the installation of clean energy and decarbonize the nation's buildings and vehicles, working to create a more equitable distribution of energy throughout our country. And then we have a local initiatives program, and clean energy begins in our communities. Local governments have a pivotal and sometimes underappreciated role in bringing new solar, wind, or energy efficiency to our residents. And our local initiative team helps cities and counties and small towns use policy tools and resources to drive the growth of clean energy and address climate change and create new jobs. I am excited to tell you about a new initiative, Energy Ready. Energy Ready has a suite of programs which provides free technical assistance and recognitions to local governments, helping them strategically manage the expansion of local energy and clean technologies. Energy Ready offers expert guidance on solar energy, electric vehicles, and charging infrastructure, and distributed wind energy. And I'll drop some links in the chat so you all can take a look at that and explore that a little bit more. And then IREC focuses on workforce development. We support the growth of a highly trained and inclusive clean energy workforce that empowers individuals and communities. We work to bring together diverse organizations to advance workforce development solutions. And part of that is this National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance that you all are a part of today. Next slide. So today's agenda, we're going to have a few introductions, and then we're going to jump into the National Solar Jobs Census, Voices from the Clean Energy Workforce. I'm excited to bring to you two folks that work at IREC, Avery Palmer, Mallory Stewart Robinson. As you all might know, the Department of Energy put out a jobs report later in the summer this year, and IREC has been doing the solar census for a few years now, but I'm so excited to bring this session to you today because we've got some new takes on the census with some qualitative data. We really dig into some things that I think you will find beneficial. So we're excited to bring that to you today, and then we'll have Q&A at the end of our panelist presentation. Next slide, please. So just a few reminders, if you're joining us, welcome to the Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. If you could put your name and the organization you're with in the chat, that would be great. We have a great session for you today, including some questions and polls. So hopefully you all are ready to participate. All the listeners are on mute, and we'll be using the Q&A tab. You should be able to find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen to send us questions. I'll keep a lookout in the chat in case there are any that pop up there, but if you could use that Q&A function, that would be great. We'll address your questions in the discussion at the end of the webinar. We will be sending a copy of this presentation, the recording, and any other follow-up resources afterwards. So make sure we've got your name in the chat. That would be great. Closed captioning has been enabled for this webinar. So if attendees would like to utilize closed captioning, please press show caption. You should be able to see that next to your Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in the user control panel. So I think that's it for our reminders. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you all a little bit about the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance for those of you who are new. The National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance was created in partnership and with support from the Bank of America to really dig into the clean energy workforce and to find and consolidate best practices and upskill expanding programs that really help to diverse and create an equitable, inclusive, clean energy workforce. As you all know, we have a lot of work to do, and to be able to do that, we need a clean energy workforce. So we came together and canvassed a host of stakeholders to find out what are some best practices, where are there gaps, and where do we need to focus. And over the past year and a half, we've been bringing panelists to you to help operationalize that. And today's session will be centered around data, which I think is a great place to start. Next slide, please. But some other areas that we focus in cohorts are training, education, and credentialing, really working with colleges and other education and training providers and credentialing bodies. At IREC, we really feel like quality education and training is the cornerstone of growth in clean energy as well as sustainability. We'll focus on funding and program design. There are so many federal, regional, and state opportunities and resources floating around. How can we best work together and leverage those opportunities? We'll focus on recruitment and support of workers and learners, really to digging into these underrepresented communities and accessing community-based organizations and energy justice organizations to really help streamline services and help remove barriers to job seekers and students entering the clean energy space. And then employer recruitment and retention, which is key to sustainability in the marketplace. We provide technical assistance and training to employers and really incorporate trade associations to figure out how we can provide high quality service to our employers and contractors in the industry to remain sustainable. Next slide, please. IREC has launched our workforce initiative called Green Workforce Connect to help do some of this work. Green Workforce Connect is a platform that provides career exploration for job seekers so that they can really explore IREC's career maps. What are their career trajectory? How much can they make? What do these jobs look like? And then we want to connect them to quality education and training providers in their area. Again, quality training is going to be the cornerstone of that sustainability. So we want to connect them to that training, but then on the back end, provide support to employers and contractors to really help expand a highly trained and diverse clean energy workforce. We'll drop the links to those resources in the chat. We'd love to have you be a part of those discussions as we continue to build out Green Workforce Connect. Next slide, please. And we've got some upcoming webinars I'm excited to share with you. National Apprenticeship Week will be November 17th through the 23rd this year, and we will be hosting an introduction to registered apprenticeships, the benefit structure and types of programs. That will be Thursday, November 20th. So mark your calendars for that. This will be the first in a monthly series on registered apprenticeships in clean energy, hosted by the Institute for Workplace Skills and Innovation, IWSI America, and IREC. And we'll be sending out more details on that coming soon, but be on the lookout for that. Next slide, please. We also have two opportunities already in the books for 2025. Opportunities for contractors in the Weatherization Assistance Program will be happening in January, and recruitment and outreach in the Weatherization Assistance Program will be coming in March. And be on the lookout for more information coming soon about Alliance webinars and the schedule of series for this webinars coming out in 2025, and hopefully one or two before the end of the calendar year. And one more reminder, we do have a LinkedIn page that I will drop in the chat so you all can network and drop some things in there as well. So I will drop all of those things in the chat, and we will send them out when we recap this webinar through email as well. Next slide, please. That's all I have for introductions and wrap up. I am super excited to welcome our panelists today, Avery Palmer, the Workforce Communications Director, and Mallory Stewart-Robison, Director of Research and Analysis, both at IREC, who are bringing a wealth of knowledge about the solar census to you today. And I'm excited to turn it over to Avery.
It'll help if I start by unmuting myself. Thank you all for being here. I'm excited to be with you today to talk about our workforce findings on the Solar Jobs Census. Really quick before we get into that, the apprenticeship webinar for next month, I do apologize, there was a mistake on the slide. November 20th is a Wednesday, not a Thursday. So on Wednesday the 20th, we hope you can join us for a webinar introducing registered apprenticeships. And I'm going to post the registration link right here in the chat where you can find out more information. Next slide, please. All right. So the National Solar Jobs Census is a report that we've been issuing for 14 years now, since 2010, first by the Solar Foundation and now from IREC. And it's an annual comprehensive report on the number of solar jobs and the state of the workforce. And what I really think is valuable in this report is, yes, it can tell you how many solar jobs there are and how the number of jobs has grown and changed over time. But then we really look more in depth to ask questions like, where are these jobs? What are the number of jobs in each state? What are the number of jobs in different parts of the industry? And then just questions about the workforce. How difficult is it to hire qualified workers? What strategies are companies using to hire qualified employees and diversify the workforce? So we hope that this report helps provide kind of a barometer and an assessment of where the industry is and how it's changing over time. The Solar Jobs Census is based on a couple of sources. What we've used every year is a comprehensive survey of energy firms. This survey is administered by the Department of Energy for a separate report called the U.S. Energy and Employment Report. And this Department of Energy report covers all industries, not just solar. And what we do is we take the results of that survey and we go deeper into what it means for the solar and storage industry. And then in addition to that, this year, we are excited to present a separate qualitative study, which is based on anonymous interviews with members of the solar industry to go more in depth about the questions we have about the workforce. Next slide, please. All right, so I will start with some of the results from the quantitative study, and then we'll get into the qualitative results in a little bit. So in 2023, to make a long story short, there was good news for the solar industry and for the clean energy workforce in general. We found in the Solar Jobs Census that there were about 279,000 solar jobs. That's workers who spend the majority of their time on solar-related work. That was a 5.9% increase, about 15,000 jobs added from the previous year. And again, this is as of 2003. Next year, we'll come out with another report with an update for 2024 numbers. If you include the number of jobs for those who spend a part of their time on solar and a part of their time on something else, maybe they work in a manufacturing plant, for example, and work partially on solar panels and partially on manufacturing another product, then we come to a total of about 364,000 solar workers. And solar jobs increased in almost all states in 2023 as well. Next slide, please. So here's how solar job growth has happened over time. As you can see, we saw steady growth in solar jobs since we first released the Solar Jobs Census in 2010. At this point, the solar industry has has the most jobs in any clean energy industry except for energy efficiency, and it has about twice or more than twice as many jobs as the coal industry. So what we've seen since 2010 in the last decade and a half is steady growth and the emergence of solar as a mature industry that is a job creator across the country. Jobs increased steadily until about 2016. Since then, they've more or less leveled off, fluctuated from year to year, and there are a couple of reasons that that's happened. One of them is that the industry has matured and it's just become more efficient. Labor productivity has increased. And a second factor is the increased importance of utility scale solar. And while residential solar has more jobs overall per megawatt installed, the utility scale industry is more labor efficient, and hence you get a slower increase in the number of jobs, but it's good news overall because the industry is growing and we're getting low cost solar energy for the country. Next slide, please. Okay. The Solar Jobs Census also breaks down solar jobs by industry sector. The majority, or about 2/3 of the jobs, are at installation and project development firms. And this sector gained about 77,200 jobs in 2023. Operations and maintenance is the sector that saw the largest increase, adding about 4,700 jobs, an increase of about 28%. Wholesale trade and distribution is the sector that includes logistics, warehousing, and related tasks. That grew by about 8 or 9% in 2023. And in the manufacturing sector, the number of jobs was overall about the same in 2023, although we did see an increase in, again, those jobs where they're spending a part of their time manufacturing in the solar industry and a part of their time on other manufacturing tasks. We are definitely seeing a number of new factories, solar module factories come online as a result of the incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act. So we definitely won't be surprised to see manufacturing jobs increase in the years ahead. Next slide, please. All right. So we're going to start with the first question in our little poll. These poll questions are just for fun. We're not tracking who answers what. It's completely anonymous. But the first question for you is, which solar market segment has the most jobs overall? Commercial, community solar, residential, or utility scale? All right. Okay, I don't know if you can see the results on screen, but most of you were correct. The answer is residential. Sorry about that. Okay, next slide, please. Michelle, are you still seeing the poll results on the screen, or did those go away? Okay, I think we're fine. So here's a breakdown of jobs by market segment. So again, residential is the sector that has the most jobs per megawatt, and we had over 100,000 residential solar jobs in 2023. And then you can see the jobs in the other sectors here. Next slide, please. Okay. So although residential has the most jobs overall, the largest increase in 2023 was in utility scale. Utility scale solar saw a 6.8% increase in 2023. That is a reversal from 2022 when the utility scale segment actually lost jobs. What we saw in 2023 was in the utility scale sector, we were able to resolve some of the supply chain issues and concerns over potential tariffs that occurred in the years after the pandemic. And the utility scale segment rebounded and was able to install a lot of new projects that may have been on hold or pending in previous years. Residential also saw strong growth of 6.3%, although this was a slowdown from 2022, the year when residential increased by 11%. The residential sector is facing some headwinds, including high interest rates and the new net metering policies in California, which are affecting residential sales. We also saw a decline in commercial solar jobs, although we did see more installations in the commercial sector. There were also factors like interconnection delays and a possible increase in productivity. But we also saw a growth in jobs in community solar. Next slide, please. So in addition to jobs in the solar industry, we also track jobs in storage. And in 2023, there were about 89,000 jobs in clean storage, which is a term of art that mostly includes battery storage, but also things like pumped hydro and EV battery manufacturing. Clean storage jobs increased by about 4% in 2023, with about 3,000 jobs added. And then if you put it all together, we have about 450,000 workers who spend at least some of their time on solar energy or battery storage in 2023. Next slide, please. All right. Next question for you. What percentage of solar workers are members of a union? 8%, 10%, 13%, or 16%? Okay. We got a mix of responses for this one, but the answer is actually 13% are members of a union. Next slide, please. So union representation in the solar industry actually increased by 3 percentage points over 2022 for a total of about 13%, which is great news because the union membership in solar is now almost double that of the private sector workforce and also more than the overall US workforce. And this likely shows the impact of incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act for things like apprenticeships and prevailing wage requirements that encourages union representation. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mallory, to talk more about our qualitative results. But the Solar Jobs Census gets into a number of questions about both workforce development and also the demographics of the solar industry. And every year we include in our survey demographic questions like the number of women, the number of Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American solar workers. And these demographics numbers didn't change much in the past year. They have changed a bit in the past 5 or 6 years. But the short takeaway here is that we've still got more work to do. Women account for about 30% of the solar workforce. About 8.5% of the workforce identifies as Black or African American. There is good representation for veterans in solar at 8%, but diversity and inclusion and equity have been priorities for the solar industry for a number of years, and there's continued work to be done in this area. Next slide, please. Okay. So I think there might be some questions in the chat, but we can follow up on your questions at the end of the presentation. But now I will turn it over to Mallory.
Thank you, Avery, and thank you for going over the quantitative portion of the report. I think that the demographics is a great place to segue into the qualitative because it really highlights why we did this additional study this year. So for a little bit of background about the qualitative, next slide, please. So we did semi-structured interviews, so essentially free-flowing conversations, but wanting to make sure we captured most of the same data across our participants with 18 people across 15 different organizations. This was something that was done entirely in-house by IREC, so you won't find this information in the user report. And the goal here was really to dig into the parts that the numbers can't get into. As you saw a couple of slides ago, there hasn't been a lot of movement when it comes to the percentage of women and people of color in the solar industry. So we really wanted to dig into the why of that. And we did this by speaking to a number of different firms across the industry. We had both for-profit and nonprofit firms. We represented all of the different segments, so residential, community, solar, commercial, and utility scale. And then we also spoke to a couple of nonprofit training providers as well. The people we were interviewing were members of the organization who can have a say in hiring. So talent and recruitment directors, executive leadership, internal trainers, that sort of profile. And the question we were trying to answer was what strategies are firms in the solar industry using to build a diverse and skilled workforce? Next slide, please. Thank you. So, 18 different interviews. We had so much data that we were able to glean from this. But here are really the key takeaways, and I'll go through all of these one by one. But I think the biggest thing sort of across all of the interviews is the need to build careers, not jobs. And what I mean by that is in order to have retain workers, keep people in the solar industry for the long term, it needs to be more than just a job and something that people can really identify with and can see spending years and years in the field. A few different ways to can work towards that goal of building careers, not jobs. Offering consistent and comprehensive training, increasing diversity with long-term strategies. We know that short-term strategies don't work here, right? Working with local partners, and then also building soft skills alongside technical experience. And I'll go through all of these one by one. Next slide, please. Yeah, so starting off with kind of the overall theme, again, building careers, not jobs. Another way to phrase this, I know kind of IREC, and I'm sure we've talked about it in previous Alliance presentations, we talk about high road jobs a lot. So that's really a related concept here. There are a lot of things that go into staying in the job to the long run, but one of them is pathways to promotion. Being able to know that, once you've sort of learned everything you can in your current role, you're able to move on, but still stay within the same company or the same industry is really important. So firms shared with us that communicating those pathways is really key, and providing opportunities for employees to develop their professional skill set. A lot of firms said that they had had quite a bit of success with actually incentivizing employees to develop their skill set. So going beyond providing professional development to actually providing bonuses or gift cards or like extra vacation days if they completed certain professional development tasks. Of course, safety is number one. Many jobs within the solar industry are quite dangerous. And a lot of people in our interviews shared that, safety is one of the reasons why their employees stay with them. If you're not sure if you're going to be able to go home at the end of the day, you're probably not going to stay in that job very long. Related to this concept of travel of family and making sure that people are able to have a really full life outside of work is travel schedules. It's quite common for a lot of firms to employ travel crews, have a lot of travel for their employees, but that can also be a barrier, particularly to women or anyone else with care responsibilities to staying in the solar industry for the long term. So as much as possible, we really recommend building travel schedules that will work for those with families. And then beyond the job itself, there's also sort of this broader idea of being a part of the clean energy effort. One of the great things about being in the solar industry, being in this field, is that you can feel really good at the end of the day about what you did during your 8 hours of work, right? And I think connecting to that larger decarbonization effort as much as possible is, of course, great. And we have a really great quote from one of the interview participants who works at a residential and commercial firm that I think sums this up perfectly. You're part of a larger decarbonization effort, and the skills you learn today can take you all around the country. You can live a good life as a result of this position. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so now that we've talked about sort of the overall building careers, as you saw a few slides ago, there are a few different ways we recommend firms do that. And one of them is comprehensive training. Something that came up a lot in the interviews is that there's typically a lot of training at the beginning of the job, right? It's a lot of training to learn how to be a solar installer, for example. But there's also a need for continued education and training throughout an employee's time at your firm or in the industry. And that includes both technical skills, but also things like leadership training. We'll talk a little bit more about soft skills in a few slides, but having options for leadership training, of course, helps people stay in their roles for the long term and grow within firms. For training, it's really important to offer paid time and time for professional development. Several of the firms that we spoke to said that they had professional development stipends, but that a lot of people didn't use them. And one of the reasons why is because they didn't have time in their workday to use their professional development stipends. So just offering the benefit oftentimes is not enough. It's important to also dedicate time during people's workday, not unpaid time after work, for them to develop those skills. And making it really clear what those resources are, what they can use their professional development stipend on. A great thing to do, of course, is partnering with local institutions for training programs and apprenticeships. And again, we'll talk about that in more detail in a couple of slides. This quote from a residential firm, I think, also sums up a really interesting barrier as well. The worst thing we could do is not give training to those branches that are the busiest. And in this interview, this participant was highlighting that sometimes the crews that are really effective and have, really, great rates of like installing and quickly and well, because they are so good at their jobs, they won't get scheduled for training. And that's something that as an organization, it's really important to avoid because you're inadvertently kind of like punishing people for being particularly good at what they do. So I just thought this was a really interesting point and a great thing to keep in mind as well. Next slide, please. All right, so we have our first poll question. Again, we're not collecting any information here. This is just kind of for fun to see sort of what's going on in the room, but does your organization provide diversity, equity, and inclusion training? And then if they're mandatory or optional. All right, I think we can, perfect. So you should all be able to see the results, but we have 60% said yes, trainings are mandatory, 25% said trainings, yes, and trainings are optional, and then 15% said that you all do not have DEIA trainings. Next slide, please. Well, I am very glad to see that you all are doing better than the solar industry as a whole. So in the quantitative part of the solar job census, we found that 33% of organizations included DEIA training. So that's not even getting into mandatory or not. So that's really valuable information to have, right? That only a third of organizations have DEIA training. So let's talk a little bit more about that in depth. I know there's a few different acronyms that are used. Here at IREC, we use diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Among the different organizations we talked with, though, there were some differences in the acronyms used, but for the purposes of analysis, kind of including that all here. It was, of course, really vital that DEIA is a long-term strategy. It's not just a box you can check off, and that it's really embedded throughout the workplace culture. One of the reasons why I asked specifically about mandatory training in the polls is because that came up quite a bit in the interviews, that some organizations shared that while they had DEIA trainings, they weren't mandatory. And as a result, the only people who came were already interested and knowledgeable about the topic. So that's one reason why we do recommend mandatory trainings, but also trainings that aren't just kind of separated and isolated from everything else, but embedding DEIA kind of throughout the organization, throughout all practices as much as possible. This also includes things like feedback sessions, affinity groups. A lot of organizations shared that they had a lot of success with those in kind of creating a stronger sense of community. Pay equity is incredibly important. I live in New York State, so for example, here it's actually mandatory on jobs to include the salary bands, but that's not the case in most states. And some of the participants who were in states that had mandatory salary bands shared that they had actually felt it had been better for the industry as a whole. They could, see if they were paying competitive compared to their peers, and it had really had a positive impact on the solar industry in those areas. But even if it's not required in states, it really helps to close wage gaps to include them. And then, of course, it's really important that women, people of color, other disadvantaged groups are represented in high-level positions, not just entry-level and manual labor positions. This is something that came up again and again in the interviews, particularly with training providers, that the top line numbers of what percentage of the solar industry is from a disadvantaged group doesn't tell the full story, because it is more common that those that representation is at the entry level. And while that's a start, we need representation at all levels of the solar industry. This quote here is probably the most impactful from the interviews that we did. And because of that, I've included it in every presentation since we published the results, because it just really says everything perfectly. There's something really deceptive about the demographics of the industry where they say, oh, Black people and brown people and people from other ethnicities and origins are participating in this, but they're actually only participating in the part that gets paid the least, in the part that does the most work. So I couldn't have said it better myself, and that quote has really stuck with me throughout the analysis and sharing of the results. Next slide, please. All right, another poll question. Does your organization have a registered apprenticeship program? So we have a few options here. Yes, we lead an apprenticeship program in-house. No, yes, we are part of a group apprenticeship program. No, but we're planning on implementing one. Or no, we do not have one. All right, I think that's probably good. Great. So you can all see the results. So about 2/3 don't have an apprenticeship program. Really exciting for the 8% who are planning on implementing one. Congrats to you all. Just under 20% have a group apprenticeship program, and then 11% in-house. So really interesting. Unfortunately, in the quantitative part of the census, we do not have all of this information, but it's definitely something we'd love to collect in the future. Next slide, please. All right. So the reason I wanted to ask a question about apprenticeships is because the next slide is about local partnerships and the importance of investing in them. So partnering with community colleges, as well as other training providers or high schools to align on curriculum development and employee recruitment is one of the top strategies that our interview participants said for recruitment and building a really sort of like long-lasting pipeline of workers. One of the ways to do this is joining a registered apprenticeship program or one that's led by an educational institution, labor union, or other organization. One of the things that really stuck out to me about local partnerships, whether it's through registered apprenticeship programs or working directly with colleges, is that many firms shared that they felt it really boosted their local reputation, that it was a great way not only to of course, have qualified workers, but also to be known in the community as a great employer to work for, and as the kind of place that people want to ask their friends for a referral, that sort of thing. So this was came up time and again in the interviews as one of the most effective methods. And not only does it mean you have a great reputation in the local area, but some firms that were in places without a lot of solar workers said that they started having local partnerships and apprenticeships so that they could train the community, rather than worrying too much about bringing workers in from outside areas, creating their own, workforce development pipeline in their community. And here's a great quote from an interview participant from a residential and commercial firm. It creates a common bond where we're all sort of rowing to help the same communities. So again, highlighting that, there's many benefits to having local partnerships. Next slide, please. And then finally, building soft skills. So soft skills, what does that really mean? One of our partner organizations who I was talking with recently likes to use the term essential skills, which I think is a really great framing as well, because, these skills are really essential. A lot of participants in the interviews said that, someone can have perfect technical skills, but if they don't have the soft skills, then it's just not going to work out. So some examples of soft skills, these are things like communication, collaboration. There was also, it can also mean kind of, skills related to making sure you're at work on time, that, everything is, you're very communicative if you get sick and you can't come into work, those sorts of things. Something that came up time and again in the interviews is particularly for travel crews, for crews that, they're spending so much time together. They're doing oftentimes a quite dangerous job. It's incredibly important that people are able to, work together and not have, unnecessary issues on job sites. Another thing that came up is if you're working in the residential solar, it's quite intimate. You're in people's homes. They can, if you're on their roof, they can probably hear you when they're sitting in their living room, right? So there's also almost a bit of a sales aspect there, even though an installer wouldn't be in a sales role, but just that, when you're working in someone's home, there's a different sort of communication style needed there as well. So with all of that in mind, it's really important to develop soft skills in addition to technical skills. Of course, you need the technical skills to be able to do the job right, but there should also be training targeted towards developing those soft skills. And again, that goes to keeping people in the job for the long term and keeping them in the solar industry. It's really important, though, that soft skills and how we teach them incorporates diversity and inclusion. So this includes training on microaggressions, power dynamics, and conflict resolution. I think it's also important to highlight that, different people have different ways of communicating. Saying that we need training on soft skills doesn't mean there's only one correct way to communicate, right? And that's part of the need to incorporate DEIA into these trainings, is so that there is understanding kind of around different communication styles, et cetera. And then apprenticeship and early career programs can also provide personal financial literacy training as well. With some of our training providers, they shared that, for people in the program, it may be their first job. So things that if you've been in the workforce for a while, you don't even think about anymore, aren't obvious if it's your first job. So that could include setting up filling out a W-2, how to have a resume, in some cases, actually even setting up a bank account for the first time might be needed, depending on, who's in your apprenticeship programs and how you can best support them. So all of that is to say that there are a lot of different soft skills, and they should not be neglected solely in favor of technical skills. And I honestly, there are so many quotes I could pick from the soft skills discussion, because it was just such a hot topic in the interviews, but this one I think is really great. If someone has great soft skills and then you mix that with technical skills, they're almost unstoppable. Next slide, please. All right, our last poll question. Of course, all of these skills are important, but just for a fun question, kind of end on before we go into the Q&A, which one do you think is most important to your workplace in particular? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. There are soft skills that don't just start with C, but a bit of a theme here. All right, I think most people have answered. Actually quite interesting results here. So top answer is communication, a little over at nearly 2/3, so 63%, 28% for collaboration, 9% for creativity or creative thinking. And although I think that was critical thinking, but anyway. And then the last one being creativity, which no one selected, which I think is also really interesting. Of course, all of these are important, but just something sort of fun to think about and see. So I think with that in mind, I will turn it over to Avery or Cynthia for some Q&A.
Thanks so much, Mallory. So the full report is at solarjobscensus.org. There's a lot more. Can everybody hear me? It said I was muted. I think I am not. The full report is at solarjobscensus.org, and I'll put it into the chat as well. There's a lot more great information, so we'd encourage you to take a look. And you can find our contact information there as well. Please feel free to get in touch. So we have a couple of questions in the queue so far. Please feel free to add a question to the Q&A tab. And the first one is, are BESS jobs included in the solar numbers? I believe that's referring to storage jobs, but maybe the person can clarify if that's not what they meant. But the way that the Solar Jobs Census accounts for storage jobs is There's a separate number for solar jobs, about 279,000, and then an additional number of jobs focused on storage, which are counted separately. And as I mentioned earlier, if you put them both together, both solar and storage jobs account for about 450,000 jobs overall. I hope that answers the question. Just let us know if we can clarify. The next question is union membership mostly in utility scale solar? That is a great question. We did not ask that in the survey, so we can't say for sure. I think anecdotally, certainly the incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act are for utility scale solar, but that would be a great question for us to get into further in a future study. The next question, in respect to the need for soft skills, is there data or studies being done to look into the most effective ways to impact these skills? Excuse me. Is there data or studies being done to look into the most effective ways to impart these skills on a new worker? Mallory, do you want to try that one?
Off the top of my head, I don't know of any studies specifically on that. I do think that would be really interesting and could be an area for future research. So yeah, if you find any, I would love to read them, but not that I'm aware of. I'll also say about the qualitative, because it is entirely we do it all ourselves at IREC. We are hoping to continue to do it in future years and have some flexibility as to what we research. So we also welcome, any thoughts or ideas if if there's something in particular you'd like to learn more about.
Okay, other questions? Yeah, and to echo what Mallory said, we'd welcome your ideas or suggestions for what this report maybe doesn't answer that we might want to try to look into in a future report. We're really we make changes every year to try to focus on hopefully what some of the most important questions are for the industry. So we'd welcome your ideas either now or following up with us later for what you'd like to know about the solar workforce, what you'd like us to try to measure, try to find out. There's a question in the chat. What challenges do you foresee for workforce with the waves that Solar for All awards will cause? Cindy, do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, I think timing is going to be one of the biggest issues. We all know it takes quite a bit of time to train a workforce. And since our goal is to have quality training, and what Avery and Mallory just shared really encompasses quite a few factors in making sure that happens. And so that takes time. So really making sure that we've got a solid sector strategy approach aligned with employers' needs and the timing of those needs relation to the Solar for All and the greenhouse gas reduction funding is really going to be key, so that we're not churning out quality job seekers into the workforce for jobs that aren't ready yet, and that also we've got them ready for when those funds do come to fruition. I think the other key piece there is that there's really a lot of opportunity and resources for folks in those communities, whether it be homeowners or community organizations. And so really making sure that we've got enough outreach for folks to really understand what these jobs are and what some of these big projects are going to need. I think making sure that we have those things aligned really will focus would be a great place to focus our efforts, making sure we have everybody at the table who needs to be at the table for these conversations. But I think timing and training are going to be a large issue. Some of the things that I hear quite often is that people still don't know what jobs are in clean energy, or what does that mean? And we even had some comments here. Well, does this include battery? Does it include manufacturing? And so really making sure everybody understands what's involved in the community solar and the solar for all in each state is going to be key. So we're working with states and some organizations to help with some of that and pull together some resources for the workforce ecosystem. But I think that timing and quality training piece is going to be, it could be a challenge in some places.
Great, thank you. And some helpful comments in the chat. Thank you. Deborah mentioned look under Google Scholar on soft skills. There's a lot out there on creating workforce readiness. Local community organizations and nonprofits have a lot of experience. And then Jordan mentioned, please continue pulling the thread on the need for soft skills. It will lead you to the root of the problems with why so many in the job market are lacking essential skills. Appreciate that feedback. Okay. Other questions or comments? Does not necessarily need to be about this report, but if you have questions about the workforce in general, we'd be happy to discuss. And appreciate all the resources that have been shared in the chat. We will pull this together and send everyone a follow-up email with a recording of this presentation and a link to the slides, as well as links to all of the resources that have been shared.
Yeah, I would just like to add that if you all have ideas for ways that we can expand this data in the future, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I also put the link to our LinkedIn page in the chat, which you all should have access to, and you can feel free to post there as well. But if you all have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We've got our emails here up on the screen. But I want to thank both Avery and Mallory. They put a lot of time and effort into this report. And as you all have noticed in the chat, we really need it and we need more of it. So if you all have any other questions, we'll hang out for just one more minute. But thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you all next time. All right. Thanks again, everybody.